with all these speakers around, I can hardly get a word in edgewise. Anyway, but I was moved to thank you all so much. All of you, I think you should give yourselves a big round of applause. You and so many other people who are watching right now and who will watch this, you have gone above and beyond, put so many hours in, frozen your dishes, and you've been volunteering since long before the petition ever was a thing. And I'm just so proud to know all of you, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I was also moved to, when I saw that Jasper was going to be here, to introduce him. Some of you may not know that he's visiting from the Netherlands. He is an independent journalist, and he's been trying to warn us ever since Chris met him about how things are in the Netherlands. They're going to happen over here. They're ahead of us. There's reasons why our Dutch friends have moved here. And I don't know if he wants to be a downer and tell you what's headed your way. We haven't heard from him before. But I just really wanted to introduce him and thank him for keeping on, because he's a warrior over there in Holland too. Thank you,
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jesse Smith. I'm coming all the way from Holland. I'm an independent journalist, working for Common Sense TV. It says on my hat, gezond verstand. It says on my hat, gezond verstand means common sense. What is it? I guess it's 5 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. Some bloke from Canada came all the way over from the Netherlands because there was a farmer's protest. And a dairy farmer down south called me up, said, Jasper, you're living close to the airport. You need to pick that guy up. Okay, let's do that. So I picked the guy up. First I was asking for a face, because who knows, our airport is massive and busy. And then I took him in my diesel car and said, Chris, where can I drop you off? Maybe you know him a bit. Jasper, I didn't arrange anything. And I'm like, I'm way too Dutch for this guy. So I took him home, I put him to bed, and went up to work. Late that evening, we went up to Amsterdam, and it was so much fun. We did a live stream, and basically the friendship started. It's a brother from another mother. So thank you, Chris, for doing this. And one thing in democracy is really important, and that's conversation. And that's, I guess, why we're here. We're here to talk to each other, learn from each other. Holland is basically front runner in this madness. What's happening in Holland is happening here. Elon Musk had it during the COVID time. What happening in China happens in Europe, and then it's happening in America. And basically that's what I'm seeing here as well. And sometimes I'm walking around and I'm thinking, what happened here? It's being punched in the face all the time. Let me start with healthcare. That's a big topic that you all need to talk about, but in healthcare in Holland, it's basically the front runner of the Obamacare in America. I'm paying about 130 euros, my boss is paying 130 euros, basically it's 800 something euros if you go to the doctor and then everything is arranged. But before that, before all the electronic things, the doctors were saying something about 60,000 people get wrong medicines and we need a digital system because we don't want nobody to be killed by taking wrong medicines. So they took the Dutch healthcare system in a online system. Everything is, of course, automatically arranged from the bank account being charged. But when I look, basically, I'm feeling like a number. It was a Sunday, I had a hangover, I was laying on my couch, and my phone ringed on Sunday, and there was no number on it. And I was like, well, that's probably somebody who wants to sell me energy or new contract or something, I'm not picking up. And I was falling asleep, I wake up with a headache, and I was looking at my phone, 3 missed calls, and a text message, and a voicemail. And first I was from a doctor saying, just you need to come back to the hospital because we need to do the rest of your treatment. And I'm like, I never went to the hospital. That was on a Sunday. On a Monday, my house doctor called Jasper, and we went to the hospital. Why did you leave? And by the way, why are you taking HIV medicines? And I'm like, what? I'm not. I'm perfectly healthy. You can see it in your stream. I never visit you. I have nothing. What's happening? Jasper, you need to go to the hospital right now because your medicine. And I received a text message saying your digital ID is ready to log in for making an appointment. And I'm feeling like, have anybody seen the enemy of the state? That's what I felt at that moment. Why do I need to go to a hospital? But some dude probably identified my name under my name, but then the hospital has to take the care of it. But that's exactly the point. How would you, if your house doctor is calling, if your hospital is calling, and they're sure you were there, and I'm like, no. So I felt like, how is this happening? I thought that was really weird. I need to talk about the asylum seeking crisis. We have loads of crises, of course. We've got the energy crisis. The asylum seeking thing is, a year ago, we're not allowed to have guns. We're not allowed to have knives and all that. That's, the violence is only for the government. If they want to use it, we need to be smacked to the ground and carried away. But then again, there are guns, and there are knives, there are stabbings, there are shootings. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the police officer received a telephone call. That was on the end of the shift. They went up in that house. There were 3 Muslims in there. The cop was stabbed in his face, and then he had to shoot the guy down. He died. Well, the other guy already died because there was a stabbing in that house. He received a house. He was 21 years. Normally, you can grab, if you want to have social housing in Holland, you have to be 18. You have to be registered, and then you have to be, where I live, 18 years on a list for housing. That guy is 21 in social housing. So that means that our local government gave that guy a house, as well as his mother, as well as his sister. So why can't they live together? Why would they take 3 houses? Why are they stabbing our priests? Why are, we have a girl in Holland, her name was Lisa. She was living in Amsterdam, was bicycling now, raped and killed. It was election time, so the police officer, department couldn't say anything. We were waiting until the elections were over, and then all the footage came through. He was riding on a specific bike. There were footage of it. So basically, they could have known they were there. The guy was living in an asylum-seeking center in Amsterdam. In his closet, there were knives, guns, and cocaine. That's what we have to deal all the time with. We're receiving over 1,000 immigrants a day. That's called an immigrant. A week, 1,000 immigrants a week. They have to, we have a spreading bill. That means in every little city, in every little town in Holland, they need to pick up those immigrants. They're not adjusting, and it's basically, we're asking our government, we're last, what was it? Saturday, I believe, in London there was a major protest. We were over in Holland, over 10 protests. I was in Haarlem asking for the Liberal government, please do something. And I wanted to talk a bit about politics. Everybody knows the word Democrat. But what I recently understand and what I learned, and it's better understand, that you have a democratic minimalism and you have a democratic maximalism. Does anybody have to think of a thought, what does that mean? We're thinking about being, if we're talking about that story, we're thinking about small government and more power to yourself, more freedom, but it means more responsibility. But that's the minimalism part. Our government run on the maximalism. That means basically the same thoughts and freedom for everybody, but a stronger government. And the stronger government you hear all the time. But basically what I mean, the more government employees, more spending, stronger government. And in the maximalism, that means that if the government, if something going wrong, you're doing well, you're prosperous, you're working hard, you're earning a lot of money, but some guys and girls are saying that's unfair. The government comes in, socialistic, dividing everything until everybody is basically on the same level, and then you can do whatever. And that's, I guess, the same thing in Holland, and I guess the same thing as in here. They're talking about liberalism, but that maximalism in it means that socialistic part. And the socialistic part is where we're going to more governments, more taxes, more employees, more rebates. And I'm seeing that every day. And the stories that you're talking about are the stories that we're already dealing with. So yeah. I will be here all night. If you have any questions later on, I will be happy to explain what's going on, because it's way more, especially, let's say, our energy crisis. Holland is not a whole producing country. We don't take for all, we have gas, we can't cooking natural energy. But the wells, they pumped it, and then they say, oh, there's an emergency. Holland is the 6th largest importer of crude oil. We only need 800,000 barrels. We're producing somewhere between 1 and 2 million. We're sending them off. Holland is 30-40% smaller than Germany, and Germany is on states 7. So what do you mean? And exactly in that oil crisis, and I'm hearing you about your landlocked country, and that's true. But there's loads of solutions for that. Our the first is America that we're buying crude oil for, but the second is, for example, Kazakhstan. It's oil producing country and then blocked. They have a pipeline going up through Turkey and they deliver to Rotterdam the Hague in our harbor, and then we've got 6 of the crude oil. We're producing everything onto concrete, asphalt. So I would like Alberta to trade with Holland, make sure you're doing the same deals like, for example, Kazakhstan or Norway. Norway is a really good example for you. They've got a whole fund. That whole fund, can you imagine, next to the pension fund in Norway, because they learned from the Dutch. When we found our natural gas, we were spending it crazy. We were spending it all over the seas, right? Didn't see it at the table. But now it's gone, we can't produce it. It's called the Dutch disease. And the people in Norway learned about it. Shell and ExxonMobil is pumping up north crude oil, is selling it. 30% of the Norway is the 3rd largest importer for us, for Holland. In that whole fund, there's 350,000 euros in it. out of the whole fund, the government is taking 3% of it. They've got free healthcare, free university, free schooling. They're the fourth richest country in the world. You can do the same. And I would like to trade with you. So, everybody's asking me, Jasper, you're coming up often, and I love Albertans. You're fantastic. Well, my fight is back home. And I will continue doing that. I will harass every politician, and I'm doing court cases. The people who are doing demonstrations, people in politics even get attacked. Forum for Democracy is mostly all of them has been in court because their language isn't the language that they want to hear. And I'm fighting for those. I think it's really important. Our fight is not only in politics. Politics is one of the four solutions. We need you guys. We need you guys to fight for us, for the people in politics. The journalism is a big part of it because I can ask questions that you can't. I can pick up and I will not stop fighting. So being here, doing journalism, being the guys who are standing up for this madness, and of course what we need is people who are financing it. And if you have in those four, you can move mountains. And that's what I'm here for. So thank you for being here. Enjoy. Thank you for having dinner with us and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. It's Joanne Rogers, and we'll just give her a moment to come on up and
I'll give this mic. I'll give this mic.
there you go. On the podium.
Please.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay, he's gonna liven me up. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight to talk to you about energy. Not the kind that you can put in a pipe. This is a different kind. And I can tell you that every single person in this room is generating it. Do you know what it is? It's hope. And it comes out of your heart. This energy was so generated by our truckers convoy. Those people that came out and waved at the truckers, the people that stayed with the truckers, when that hope was generated, it traveled all around the world. And what's happening here in Alberta right now is just as important. When we see the day that we can say we're living with freedom, don't think that that won't go around the world, because it will. There's more resting on us than only just our own freedom. This is a very important time, and we need to be part of it. A big part of it. Now, I've been around in this province a lot longer than almost anybody in this room, so I remember some of the good stuff and some of the not so good stuff. In the 70s, you know, I've heard people say, oh my God, if we were free, we'd have to have our own police. Well, hell. In the 30s, we had our own police. There were about 30 guys. They were spread all over Alberta, and all they did was trucks and buses. And we were driving on some of the safest roads in Canada. Because no company brought in vehicles that weren't in good shape, because they knew they'd get picked off. Anyway, the 70s was a very busy time for me. I was involved in transportation when we were getting ready to bring in the law for seat belts. Anybody else here can remember any of that? Oh, yeah. Anyhow, that's old stuff. But what was sad about that, at the end of the 70s, there was a change of government. And for some reason, they had the idea to save the government money, they would break up motor vehicles and farm it out to all these little offices. But what they didn't do was they didn't keep an eye on what was going on with instruction in some of the schools the driving schools. Now, here, about 6 weeks ago, I read, because of public demand, part of it was as a result of that bus accident, you know which one I'm talking about. And they started a pilot project, and they went out and they checked into some of the trucking schools. Well, they shut down a bunch of them. They shut down a bunch of the instructors that weren't any good. Well, son of a gun. You know, this is what happens with Alberta. We try something, maybe it doesn't work perfectly, and maybe we go off track. But when it's time to fix it, we know how to fix it. Do you see what my t-shirt says?
Yes.
Okay. That's something that is an emotion. And it's something that I have seen time and time again. Whoops. Don't mind me. I have the sense of balance of the drunk. I'm not dangerous, really, but health-wise, I'm as healthy as a horse. I just can't stand up straight. Anyhow, I wanted to talk to you about the next thing, and this is this thing. You know, I can remember that emotion being part of what my father said to me when I was a kid, and he would say, Jan, let's go pick some rock. Well, I was excited because then I would get to drive this big team of Belgians. That really was good for me. But you know, all through the years, everywhere I worked, every time I was involved with industry, with working people, they would have, you know, meetings. And it's the same thing now. We're doing the same thing. We're Albertans. And you know what? Say it with me. We can get it done. Don't mind me, I'll be fine. Yeah, it's funny. All right, thanks, folks. You know how determined I am. Why can't you be just as determined?
We are.
Not only is he a musician, songwriter, but he's also a very good speaker. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Mr. Ben Crane.
Sorry about that, I had to get my brains. I really admire these guys who can get up here and just talk. I don't know how you do it without having something in front of you. But this is a different kind of a deal. I've been asked by Shane and invited by Shane and Chris to join this group. And I'm not what I would call a speaker. I'm just a really handsome guy. But he asked me to do a different kind of a speech today, so I wrote it this morning. So I got my notes here. This is wiggling and it's. If you were to ask me the main reason why I'm so set against staying in Canada, my knee-jerk first reaction would be values and global governance. I definitely hold different values than our federal counterparts. Hard work, respect, personal responsibility. The list is longer than this room is wide, and I have a deep resistance to their insistence on canceling our generation's old culture in favor of ushering in a new world order. One world government with all its trappings of surveillance and control. Sounds great, doesn't it? Oh, good. Freedom is the root of what I'm looking for. But the word freedom, its definition seems to cover a whole broad spectrum and can tend to sound petty or self-serving. I just want to do what I want to do. But it is genuinely true when you think of it. So I'd like to share my heart with you tonight. When Sean and Chris asked me to join this tour, my first thought was, why me? I was joining a high-toned outfit of constitutional lawyers, economists, political scientists, media personalities, and influencers. People who have been imprisoned in this free country of ours just for having an opinion that differs from the official narrative. And then me, an uneducated, run-of-the-mill guy who can't remember critical information and couldn't argue his way out of a wet paper bag if he was paid to. But my neck is red and my collar is blue, so maybe I can relate to the common person here. I'd be useless in a courtroom or as a news reporter. I'm not Sheila, I'm not Leighton. Maybe I can show people how deep our values run and how they have shaped our very existence, our very identity. You see, we all have the internal drive to be connected with something that's way bigger than us. We get behind something and it energizes us. It feeds us. But not only that, it gives us a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, of actually contributing to society. That's a big thing that is getting lost today. See, the funniest thing is, I'm an entertainer, and I'm used to people liking me. It's actually very, my very career depends on that. So when I post something on the inner tube, as simple and harmless as a poster like for tonight, advertising a town hall, or inviting folks to have a civil discourse involving both sides, and the responses I get are sheer vitriol. Right. It's crazy. This sheer hate, it's disgust. It's stuff I wouldn't even think of doing to my enemy. And I find it very hard not to take it personal and not to worry about how it will affect my business. I've taken some hits because of the trolls some of them are actual people, not just the bots. I have a whole bunch of cousins who are bots. If you're in the Leslieville area, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not sure what woodwork these guys come out of because they sure weren't there responding kindly to something that I harmlessly posted like a new piece of artwork or a new song. They just all of a sudden showed up. But nevertheless, it does hurt. And it angers. But I haven't been thrown behind bars. I haven't got my accounts froze yet. So I keep going. And it's because of you guys, actually. It's all your fault. You keep showing up with these things. I keep going because I know that my future and the future of my family and those who follow me is so much more critical. I want my children and my grandchildren to inherit a good land. Our 6-year-old grandson, a few days ago, we go over every night. They live on the other end of the other side of the yard. We go over every night. We're so blessed. We tuck them in and we read them with them and we play with them. We throw things at them and they jump on us and break our noses. So one day when I told him I couldn't come in and say goodnight to him, he says, "Where are you going, Bumpa?" I'm Bumpa. And I says, "I'm going to a meeting." And he says, "Oh, are you going to one of those meetings where you tell people how great Alberta is?" I said, "Yes, I am." I want to inherit a good land, one that they can thrive in. A country that encourages personal responsibility and honesty and truth. Not the kind of people that find loopholes to get away with dishonesty. I want a small government where your voice is heard and your vote counts. Wouldn't that be something? Not a bureaucratically obese machine. Oh boy, did I find some words. Operated by elites in ivory towers. But I mean it. I mean, this is crazy. I want a country that encourages business ownership and resource development. Not a red tape, traffic jam, defeatist-driven economy ideology driven by global goals and decided by unelected and power-hungry tyrants. I want a government that is fiscally responsible and has a thing called a moral compass, a big one. I want a country that fosters a culture of freedom and thriving. There's a difference between thriving and existing. One that has no interest in telling you what to think, who to be, what to say, and all the beautiful surveillance that goes along with that. I want a country that aligns itself economically and socially with other countries with similar values, not with countries with horrendous human rights track records and other socialist and communist traits. I want the Canada we used to have. You folks, that ain't here anymore. That's why we want to get out of here and carry it on, because that Canada that we used to have is still here. It's alive and well in this country we call Alberta. That's what a free and independent Alberta means to me. That's why I buckle down and ride into the wind, willing to take a stand for what I believe. That's why I do what I can to travel across the province to tell my reasons for what I believe. That's why we stood in the cold and miserable conditions. That was fun. To make sure our voices were gathered and heard. We have a beautiful place here. It's rich in culture, rich in history, rich in resources, and rich in people who still carry that pioneer's grit that strong countries are forged with. Yes, we need direction. We need leadership. We need plans. We need strategies. These are being developed as we speak, and I believe the time is right for these to be trotted out and leader chosen. That's my opinion. And that's the beautiful thing about this thing, is we don't all have to be agreeing exactly alike to be unified. Unity is grabbing things together towards a common goal in spite of our differences. That's a big difference right there. And in the meantime, we need to continue to have conversations with our neighbors and our families and those in our circle of influence. There are loud voices and deep pockets organizing against what we want for our future. But by and large, I have not heard a single reason from that camp to convince me to stay in this abusive relationship. In fact, I know billions of reasons to leave. I stole that from Zane. My encouragement to you then, neighbor, and I'm hoping to give you some hope tonight because it's been a tough week. And I'm seeing despair start to settle in. I'm seeing hopelessness again. We thought we were just giving her and we got the wind knocked out of us a few times, but it's gonna happen. And this ain't the end of it. So stay focused on the goal of independence. Don't get sidetracked by the distractions of monkey wrenches thrown into the gears. Opposition is guaranteed. Grow duck feathers so that the stuff thrown at you just slides off and don't get stuck and weigh you down. You're a pioneer. You take risks because you know that they lead to rewards. And the alternative is just plain unacceptable. You might get bruised, black eye, a broke nose, but you got toughness cells. That's what I tell my grandson. Quit crying, you got toughness cells. You got big boy pants. You can take it. That's what it requires. When we get kicked down, we get back up again and again. Stick to the high road. The owner's manual says something to the effect of, don't do something to somebody that you don't want them doing to you. And then on another page it says, if a bully demands your coat, give him your shirt too. In other words, we've got to show respect to them that don't agree with us. That way nothing gets stuck to you that you regret later. Like I said, stay focused on the goal. Continue to remind yourself and your neighbor of the good things you're fighting for. You know that you ain't the only toad in the puddle. You might be the only one that's willing to speak up, not only for yourself, but for them that's afraid to. Show courage. This is war, folks. But I believe in my heart that this is the right thing to do. This is why I'm here. Stand against corruption. Stand for what's right. Get involved. Remember that the only thing needed for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. And also remember that the only way to accurately predict your future, if you want to know what's coming, the only way to accurately predict it is to write it. So, no more excuses, folks. Let's pick up a pen, start writing. It's my privilege. I've watched this gal on Facebook, or not Facebook, I don't like that word. Sorry for my language. I've watched this gal on TV. She needs really no introduction, but she's been all over with some really good podcasts and good anchors. She is the bureau chief, Canadian bureau chief of Rebel News. She's a mother. She is a smart gal, and that's why she's here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome, please, Miss Sheila Reed Gunn. Or Gunn Reed. Or just Sheila.
All right. I had no plans to speak tonight. I came for chicken and ribs. And Chris put me on the spot, but that's okay because I speak for a living, so I can come up with something. As I was introduced, my name is Sheila Gunn Reed. I'm the editor-in-chief at Rebel News, and I'm also the point person on an independence-minded third-party advertiser group called Act for Alberta. I'm a fifth-generation Albertan. I run the family farm, and I'm a Western separatist. So, because I'm winging it, I thought I would talk a little bit about some of the work that we do at Act for Alberta, because we hired a very serious polling firm, Main Street, to poll Albertans on their tendencies towards independence. And it was surprising in some aspects, but it gives us a roadmap to convincing people. So let me begin by saying that I think something's changing in Alberta, and it's not happening online, it's not happening in political circles. It's among ordinary people like you in this room. Oil field workers, farmers, parents, and especially if you notice that the petition signs young people who really want a chance to have what their parents had. And they don't see that they will have those things if things don't change. And the political class in this country keeps pretending Alberta independence is some fringe emotional outburst. They've even called it a tantrum. But fringe movements do not gather 301,000 signatures in one of the most brutal Alberta winters we've had in a very long time. Fringe movements do not mobilize 7,000 volunteers. And they do not continue growing despite nonstop attacks from politicians, media elites, the courts, activist judges, and federal bureaucrats. Something very real is happening amongst us. Albertans increasingly believe Confederation no longer works for us. Let's say something really clear here though. Wanting a referendum isn't extremism. And it wasn't extremism when Quebec got one, not once but twice. Nobody ever treated Quebecers like they were dangerous radicals for asking simple constitutional questions. But Alberta, we're not even allowed to discuss the possibility. And honestly, I believe that double standard is helping fuel this movement every single day. So I hope these people never shut up. I believe that journalism creates separatists. I know it did for me. Every time Ottawa lectures Alberta, support just grows. Every time Eastern media mocks us, support grows. Every time Alberta's industries are punished while Ottawa talks about national unity like they did this week, support just grows. And our polling that we got through Main Street at Act for Alberta reflects that reality. Recent polling put Alberta independence just a month ago. Our polling data showed that it was at 30-ish%. Just this week, it's 36. I guess the MOU didn't work. And that trend matters because constitutional movements become politically important long before they become majority movements. Quebec actually proved that. And inside our conservative coalitions across this province, support is even stronger. And I'm going to tell you these numbers because I have a point to make right after. Roughly 60% of UCP supporters say they would support Alberta independence or are open to it. Among federal conservatives in our province, the number is roughly the same. That means this is no longer some fringe movement outside of conservatism. It's embedded within the conservative grassroots itself. And so conservatives have to be realistic about the math in their attacks on the separatists. But that goes both ways. Because you cannot build a successful sovereignty movement by declaring war on the UCP premier with over 90% support inside of her own party, while 60% of that same base is open to independence. Do you see what I'm talking about? That, at the end of the day, is political self-sabotage. Those groups overlap. How many canvassers have you met who were also volunteers for the UCP? A lot, right? They're all the same people, same members, same volunteers, same organizers. They took the experience that they learned with the UCP over there, yeah, exactly. And they brought it into this movement too. So if the sovereignty movement descends into infighting and factional warfare, ordinary Albertans, ordinary conservatives are going to walk away. That's how you build a broad coalition. That's how you take that 36 number to 40 and 45 and 50. People are looking for competence And Quebec understood that too. The sovereigntist movement in Quebec became powerful when it built broad coalitions around shared grievances and shared aspirations, and boy, don't we have many. It wasn't about purity tests in Quebec, not endless internal battles. They saved those for later. Now here's a number that we found also at Act for Alberta that shatters all kinds of narratives. And I think you've seen this online. According to our polling data, 46% of First Nations respondents said they would support Alberta independence in a referendum. That's nearly half. That's more than the regular Alberta population writ large. And of course they would. If you ever saw people that the status quo of federalism has failed, it's our Indigenous friends. Sorry, I lost my place and I was really just giving her there.
Pause for effect.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about why I wrote my book, Independence Blueprint. I have about 40 copies over there. If you want a copy, I'll sign it for you. But Quebec held a series of commissions before they held the referendum because they knew that the Federalists would live in the fear, the uncertainty, the what about my pensions, the what about our borders, what about our currencies, what about citizenship. So what they did was they convened a commission that engaged nearly 50,000 people. They brought in academics, bureaucrats even, normal people. They had specific parts of the coalition or of the commission that were dedicated to young people and old people, because young people and old people have different reasons for wanting independence. And they wanted to find out what their objections were, what their fears were, so that they could go and find the answers. We have not done that yet. But the good news is that Quebec did a lot of the groundwork for us. And as Albertans, sometimes it feels like Quebec is a natural enemy. But I think not now. Not in this moment. It was actually the biggest public consultation in Canadian history that they held. And they published all their documents online. They didn't filter any of them. So we need to learn from that. We need to learn that anger is not enough. A sovereignty movement only becomes credible when it can answer practical questions calmly and confidently. Now, does that mean Alberta's independence is inevitable even if we can answer those questions? Of course not, but not yet. But the trend line matters, doesn't it? Support is rising, especially among younger Albertans and conservative voters, which makes this no longer a protest movement to Mark Carney. It's a real thing. It's becoming a serious constitutional movement with organization, infrastructure, polling, and intellectual groundwork behind it. And let's be honest, Ottawa created this. We didn't. It blocked every pipeline. It ignored every single equalization site. And then it told us to shut up about it. Every federal attack that happened to Alberta's economy created this movement. Every smug lecture from Laurentian elites like Andrew Coyne created this movement. All of it has accumulated. And now Albertans are no longer asking, how do we fix Canada? Instead, we're asking, should we continue participating in this arrangement at all? And the problem is, they won't let us ask that question. But Quebec could. Now, whether Alberta ultimately stays in Canada or not, one thing is already true. The old relationship is over, dead. Albertans are no longer willing, and we know this because 301,000 people signed a petition in the dead of winter. Albertans are no longer willing to quietly subsidize a federation that increasingly works against our economic interests. Now, I wrote my book because I didn't want to tell you what to choose, but I did tell you my bias right off the top. I'm a separatist. I want informed Albertans, Albertans who know what the questions are and who've done the homework. And Albertans who can answer every scare tactic that's going to come from these insincere federalists who all of a sudden love us. And by judging by the momentum we're seeing right now, I think that moment is already arriving. Now, I think I still have a little bit of time. Will you indulge me? Because the last part of my book is more of a love letter to my fellow Albertans. I laid out all the questions, all the answers that Quebec came up with. But at the end of the day, going through those documents, I realized that while we have a lot to learn from Quebec, we're fundamentally different. Quebec asks a lot of questions about who's going to give us all the services when Canada's no longer there. We don't care about those things because we'll just do it ourselves. We don't want stuff. We want to be free. And I think that was a fundamental difference between us and the Quebecers. Their referendums were about culture. I believe ours is definitely about culture, but it's so much more. It's about self-respect and dignity. And so I wrote a little love letter to my fellow Albertans in the last part of the book. It's called The Work We're Not Afraid of. Alberta wasn't built by people waiting to be rescued. It was built by people who stayed when it would have been easier to leave. People who worked harder when the wind cut sideways through their coats, and who bet on themselves when no one else would. Our farms didn't rise because of a federal program gently nudging them into place. Our rigs didn't punch into the earth because Ottawa believed in good vibes. This province exists because stubborn people decided to make it exist when nature and regulation said it should not. And all of that matters now. Because the idea of independence, I believe, to Albertans, has never been a threat or a tantrum. It isn't a hostage note slid under a closed federal door. It's not leverage either. It's not extortion dressed up as identity. It's something quieter and more demanding than that. It's a standard. And it's a question whispered to ourselves when the rooms empty out and the noise dies down. Are we capable of standing on our own? And the honest answer, the one we already live, is yes. We built cities where there was grass and trees. We turned winter into an industry. We learned how to drill through stubborn rock, mine the muskeg, and survive the bust that followed every boom. We learned the land will break you if you don't respect it and reward you only after it has tested your spine and your mind. Hard years are not an exception here. They are our curriculum. Albertans don't romanticize hardship. We simply don't panic when it arrives, and it always does. That's why independence doesn't terrify us the way it terrifies the people on the political talk shows. We already know what uncertainty feels like. We live it every day. We've ridden the cycle, layoffs that empty hockey arenas mid-season, the for sale signs that linger longer than anyone wants, the families that adapt without permission from anyone east of the Manitoba border. We know more than anyone else what it means to lose work, lose everything, then start again without waiting for instruction. So we're not afraid of the work ahead of us. What scares the political class is not that Alberta might want more responsibility, it's that we're capable of it. Because capability exposes necessity. Self-reliance makes dependence look like a choice, and we're done choosing that. Independence, as Albertans speak about it in our kitchens, on tailgates, and on shop floors, is not a threat outward. It's a promise we make to ourselves that no matter what arrangement governs us, we will not consent to be managed as a resource colony forever. That the people here who raise families, risk capital here, and bury their parents here deserve to govern themselves with the same maturity they bring to every hard thing in their lives. Ours is not a rebellion against Canada. It's a declaration of self-defense. We know how to keep the lights on. We already feed people we'll never meet. We export energy, food, ideas, labor, and tax revenue far beyond our borders. We already shoulder risk nationally while being told our confidence is somehow regional arrogance. We already pay into systems that do not love us back. And none of that, I believe, makes us bitter, but it makes us honest. Our prairie temperament does not crave approval. We crave solvency and fair dealing. Say what the deal is for once, and then keep it. That's why the independence conversation feels different here than it does elsewhere. Ours is wage. Albertans understand that freedom isn't free, but it's maintenance, it's paperwork, it's trade deals and border policy and pensions and procurement, and the quiet, grinding labor of self-government. And still, when our bills land on the table, we don't flip them over and panic. We read them, then we act. Quebec has always spoken of independence as a weapon pointed at Canada. We speak of ours as a tool held towards us. Theirs is about leverage, ours is about competence. One says, do this for us or else. And we ask, what would it take for us to do this for ourselves? These are not the same impulses, we're not the same people. We're not looking for drama. We're looking for dignity in our own decision makings. We want to live under rules we recognize as our own. Rules that make sense in this place where things grow slowly and our temperatures fall brutally and outcomes are earned instead of gifted to us like the rest of this country. We don't expect perfection, we expect accountability. And we're far tougher on our own failures than any distant critic in Ottawa ever could be. And we know how this ends if we choose comfort over courage. It's the slow leak of authority into our lives every day. The quiet trade of, responsibility for reassurance. That path is familiar across history. Once you learn to outsource your future, you forget how to build one, but that forgetting has not taken root here in Alberta. We still teach our kids how to fix things when they break. We still shake hands when we mean it, and we measure our success in the things that endure. Our land that's paid off, businesses passed down, skills learned the hard way. Those are not the habits of a people waiting to be ruled. Those are the habits of a people preparing to execute their own ownership. Independence, if it ever comes, won't arrive as a rupture of this country. It's going to arrive as a continuity, a continuation, more of what we already do, with fewer intermediaries, more responsibility where responsibility already lives, and more consequences where consequences already land. No one in this room is pretending it's going to be easy, but easy in this place has never been the point. The point is that Alberta does not need to be permissioned into our potential. We have already lived it. We've weathered worse storms than political uncertainty. We have rebuilt after worse collapses than economic restructuring. We've outgrown worse losses than some institutional or constitutional rearrangement. We are not reckless enough to treat our freedom as a slogan, but neither are we timid enough to treat it as forbidden. If independence remains a dream for us, it will be because we chose that, not because we're being intimidated out of the conversation, because we won't be. And if one day independence becomes a shared project amongst us, it won't be born of rage, but of readiness, the same readiness that built our barns and our churches before roads and towns were even on the map. Albertans, we don't scare easy. We scare sensibly, and then we get to work anyway. Whatever form our future takes, it won't be shaped by panic. It will be shaped by people like you. People who understand that freedom is not the absence of risk, it's the willingness to carry that risk ourselves. Thank you. Chris, are you coming up? Okay, I don't know how to close this one out.
Well, we have a big problem. Shane said I only have 5 minutes. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do, but I can tell you that there's not gonna be a song and dance. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. And I also want to say a very large thank you to the army of volunteers that are in the kitchen right now, doing dishes and helping us. When we do these things, people show up and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I sit there and I spin in a circle and I say, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Go ask Shane. And so, but it all works out. So yeah, I really appreciate all of you folks who help out with these things. And yeah, I think there's like 10 people in the back packaging up ribs, which we're going to sell. We're not taking any with us, so please buy them. You can throw them in the oven at home for whatever, 30 minutes, and you have some ribs with your supper. We also have 10 whole chickens left. Those are for sale as well, so they have to go. We're not taking them home. I'm sorry to tell you that we must buy that something. So. The last week has been really odd for me. You know, we've done so much work collectively as Albertans who care about their future. And we've come a long ways, like a really long ways. I remember when I was working with the Alberta Prosperity Project, I was the interim CEO. We did meetings in places, and there was like 12 people showed up. The appetite for independence was there, but the motivation just wasn't. It's because I think, you know, we get into the summer and we're comfortable and we just want to enjoy our lives because we're kind of supposed to do that, right? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. All the things that I would rather do than be traveling across the province to do these things. We were in Brooks last night. We drove down to Brooks last night, did a pierogi dinner. We didn't do a pierogi dinner because the kitchen was too small. And I got there, I was like, well, I guess we're ordering pizza. So we ordered pizza for 150 people and 30 people showed up. Well, we booked an event, a speaking event, on the same day as the 4-H meeting, and on the same weekend as the local sports team won their thing, and everybody was busy doing their thing with that. But that's not my point. My point is, we've come so far from the kind of fringe conversation, and it's always been a viable one, a valuable conversation. The facts support Alberta's sovereignty for sure, but we've come so far, and we're at the point now where we actually went across the province and canvassed and got people to put their name on a piece of paper and signed and compel the government to put a referendum question to the people of Alberta on Alberta's sovereignty. This is a big deal, right? We've come a long ways. And some people might think that we've had setbacks in the last couple of weeks, so I guess about almost a month and a week now. You know, with the injunction and the petition kind of getting tossed aside like it's nothing. But I just want to make sure that you all know that I believe we haven't experienced any setbacks. I think that everything that's happened up until this point has happened for a purpose, exactly the way it was intended to. Everything that we look at and we say, oh my goodness, that was such a bad thing, you know, woe is me for this happening to us. That thing happening is going to create an outcome later. And you might be wondering, well, what do you mean? That's how could you say that? I say that as a guy who was fighting the government, wondering why there was this massive push to like destroy me and my business. Having to go to court, paying fines, which I never got back, by the way. You know, that was a kind of a terrible thing. And we might see those things and say, oh, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. When people say that to me, I say, please don't say sorry. Everything that's happened has been a blessing. I didn't see it at the time. I couldn't see it because obviously we can't see it in the future. But now that I look back, I realize all these things that I considered at the time a series of unfortunate events were the greatest blessings ever bestowed on me. Because they turned me into who I am today. They put me where I am today. They gave me the motivations that I have today that's caused me to travel to every corner of Alberta, and believe me, I've been to every corner, and share the message of Alberta independence. If any of those things hadn't happened, I might not be here. You folks might not be here. So I just want to remind you that while others are flailing, what's the word? They're wailing and gnashing their teeth about what happened. I look out over the situation we're in, and I count my blessings every single day. And that's the way I'm going to be from now until the day I die. And that's not to say that there's times we go through things where we're like, man, why me? Why do we have to go through this? Why did the court have to, squash our petition that we worked so hard on? But then I remember being in Edmonton, standing about 8 feet away from Mitch, and Mitch read a statutory declaration telling Albertans how many people signed that petition. I remember seeing, the highways, like people, Alberta flags lining the highways, convoys all over the place, representing Alberta. People filling rooms like this for the last 6 years that I've been paying attention. And it's absolutely amazing. And now here we are in 2026, in the midst of another, I would say, perilous journey. We're going to go through some things in the next few months leading up until the October referendum for a referendum, which is frustrating for me as well. But I do believe that was a blessing now. And we're gonna have fights, and we're gonna have to work hard, and we're gonna have to make sacrifices. And I'm probably not gonna fish again this year. Last time I went fishing, it was the first time in like 5 years. I went with actually with Jasper and Jessica in Campbell River. And I think about these things like if I had my way, I would be working, doing my thing, feeding people delicious food, and then spending my time fishing or with my family, things like that. But I'm probably not going to do that this summer because we're going to be doing this all summer and all fall, right up until October. And then in October, we're getting on an airplane and you won't hear from me for 3 weeks. But there are sacrifices to be made. And there's things we're going to have to deal with. But please don't lose hope. And keep your eyes on the goal that you want. And for me, I want a sovereign Alberta where we can chart our own course forward. We can choose our own policy, our own legislation, our own laws, because we're the ones that will face the consequences of those. We can make sure that our kids have a bright future to grow up. We can make sure that our kids have a better chance than we did. And as I see it right now, they sure don't. This is the work we get to do. This is the blessing afforded to us living in a country like Canada where democracy is threatened, but it is still a thing. So don't let anybody bring you down. Don't let anybody convince you that this is we're back to a political thing. This is a people's movement thing. This is not about politicians. This is about you sharing your opinion, wearing your opinion after you buy some beautiful overpriced Alberta merch from one of the vendors at the back. Having conversations with your neighbors, your friends, your families, your coworkers. Being bold with your opinions. And sharing them in such a way that we bring people to our side. That's what this is about. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. If we talk about these things, if we share the facts, if we share our opinions from a place of love for, for Alberta and for our families and our future, we will bring people to our side. And this is what I've been saying the whole time. When we do that and we build the movement, the politicians become less relevant. And what they want becomes less relevant. What Danielle Smith wants with a sovereign Alberta within Canada becomes less relevant because we have done the work. We've created the movement. We became the parade, and they will get in front of it. Don't forget that. In the meantime, we're going to have some fun. We have some entertainment, some more entertainment for you. They're late getting on because we are late getting off the stage. But we're going to enjoy ourselves tonight, talk amongst each other, and have a refreshment from the lovely Jessica back there. And then we're going to go out into the world again tomorrow, maybe even tonight, and we're going to share these things with our neighbors. And we're going to bring them to these things. And when they start asking us questions or saying, hey, you can't do that because of this, we're going to say, well, you know what? Let's talk about it. And we're going to do it like human beings. Thank you very much.
great music here by Dane Van Hagen. Before he's gonna come up and he's gonna get set up. Before he starts to perform, they're actually going to do Ruthie, Dane are gonna join Ben, and they're going to do My Alberta Roots again, the three of them. So, but before they come up and get going, I'm gonna tell you the story of a house. A house that's only a couple of blocks that way. This house is for sale. And I think you need to go look at it. It's at 5607 48th Avenue. Just across from the hospital on the C&E Trail. This house is being sold, and 1/4 of the sale price is being donated to Let's Talk Alberta. So I would encourage you to go take a look at the house and please make an offer. Okay, without further ado, I will have the three of our artists come up and do our Alberta Roots.
Let me adjust the camera, guys, okay? Can you just give me about 2 minutes, guys? Yeah.
For those who are watching online, we're just gonna do a little check here, change the line, change the cams a little bit, and until in about 72 seconds. I just picked 72 because, I don't know, I like random numbers, yes.
Yes. So we're gonna have 2 guitars and a backup singer that you can on. You know this is your listen. I just made it everything, so so you're gonna have to use this. It looks like it has not.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Well, we're gonna have a bunch of fun. This wasn't planned until, well, maybe 30 seconds ago. Some of these guys haven't even heard the song, but that's what music is. Music, somebody says, is what feelings sound like. So isn't that cool? So we're gonna sing My Alberta Roots, Run Deep, and if you know it, you go ahead and sing along as well. In the key of A, that's a Canadian key, right? Yeah, A.
Good day.
That's an Alberta key. We've got 2 of them. Okay, Max, we're ready when you are. The only life I know goes back 100 years, keeping deep traditions, blood and sweat and tears, value of hard work, common sense, hope, truth, family and freedom, and the value of our youth. What makes us wanna hold on to what we know is right, and in case of opposition, stand our ground and fight. Our Alberta roots run deep. It's in our blood, in our bones, it's stronger every day. When somebody tries to move it, tear it all away. Just draw a line there in the sand, stand your ground and say, Alberta, run me. It's living on the land, watching life come and go, working hard, playing hard, sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, cause we know that God provides and has given us all the things we need to enjoy this life and ride. So it makes us wanna hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand the ground and fight our Alberta. It's in our blood, in our bones, it's stronger every day. When somebody tries to move it, tear it all away. Draw a line there in the sand, stand your ground and say, our Alberta roots, you can't hide, they can find us. Made us who we are today, and life's just good, it's don't throw it away. Our Alberta roots, running deep. Can't pull them up or dig them out. They go deeper every day. When somebody tries to move it and tear it all away, just draw a line there in the sand, stand around and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Run deep.
How about this?
Cut her off.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great night. Bye-bye.
Now you're.
That was cool, man.